The lion followed her on the movie set until suddenly it lunged at her. It clamped its jaws around her side and began shaking her violently. And when she looked back, the film crew was running, afraid that they would be next. Only the trainer stayed, shouting for the lion to drop her, and it finally let go. But then it pinned her down with its paw. She escaped with just a few scratches and went right back to filming. If you lay down on a bed of nails, your body weight is spread across thousands of points, and this means the pressure on each nail is too low to break the skin. But if one nail sticks up just a bit higher than the rest, then all that weight gets focused onto a single point. This would be strong enough to puncture your skin, which is why they need to be perfectly level. They put long metal spikes in the center of the plate before placing hundreds of them on top of the ship. You see, this roof was designed to protect soldiers from boarding enemies, impaling them as they jumped onto the iron spikes. The holes cut into the sides let cannons fire in every direction, helping them attack enemies without getting hit. They also placed a dragon head in the front, which spewed out smoke from a hidden torch to confuse nearby enemies. But the ship cost too much to make, and they also entered a time of peace, meaning they eventually stopped making the turtle ship. She heard music coming from her own teeth, and she thought these songs were secret spy messages. But some of her teeth had been filled in, and fillings in teeth can actually sometimes act like tiny receivers. If conditions are right, radio signals can actually vibrate inside, causing your skull to also vibrate, which creates sound inside your head, meaning she wasn't really hearing spies, just accidental radio broadcasts in her mouth. A man rode into town on his donkey, with his son walking next to him. But people scoffed, saying the man was cruel for making the boy walk. So they switched. The boy rode and the man walked. Then others said the boy was disrespectful for making his father walk. So they both decided to ride on the donkey together. Now people said they were hurting the donkey. So they both got off and walked beside it. But even then, people laughed. What good is a donkey if no one's riding it? And that's when they learned, trying to please everyone really just pleases no one. If you place an orange sideways and slice it with a sharp knife to create two even halves, you can use your thumb to push firmly on the peel from the outside. This will flip the orange half inside out, making the slices look like flower petals. And you'll be left with bite-sized chunks, which you can easily pluck off one by one without getting covered in juice. When you shower, warm water loosens strands of your hair from your scalp. These hairs fall and slide into the drain with the water. The strands wrap around parts of the drain and catch more hair as it falls. And over time, this hair builds up, tangling into a thick clump. Now, if you saved every strand from every shower for 13 years, you would have almost 500,000 pieces of hair, which would be just enough to knit a sweater. The branch caught on his ankle monitor, dragging both his legs into the machine. And even though his co-workers were nearby, their ear protection blocked out his screams. He fought for his life until someone finally noticed and pulled him out. But his legs had already been cut off. His coworkers tied ropes around his stumps to stop the bleeding. His heart stopped on the way to the hospital, and he needed 15 pints of blood. But somehow he survived and still lives an active life without his legs. He was way too short to join the army, but a tumor was developing in his brain. It triggered his hormones, and suddenly the 4'6" man started to grow. His hands, feet, and tongue expanded, and he grew over 2 feet in just a few years. But as he did, his spine curved. Soon his vision blurred, and eventually he had trouble hearing. Finally, doctors removed the tumor, which slowed his growth, but it didn't stop it completely. By the time he died, he was 7'8", making him the only man to live as both a dwarf and a giant. They painted giant eyes on the cow's butt and let it graze in the field. You see, cows are usually attacked by lions, who surprise them to catch them off guard. But the painted eyes make the cow's butt look like a staring face. This tricks the lions into thinking that they're spotted. And when scientists tested this out, all of the painted cows were safe, while the unpainted ones were repeatedly attacked. If you shoot at this glass drop, it's actually strong enough to shatter the bullet. But if you just lightly tap the tail, the whole thing will explode from the inside, sending glass flying everywhere. You see, it's made by dripping molten glass into cold water. This instantly cools the outside into a hard shell, while the inside contracts more slowly, locking a huge amount of stress into the head of the drop. And as soon as the tail snaps, all that stored energy is released at once, causing the whole thing to explode into dust. While in the car, her water broke. You see, a stranger was giving her a ride when she suddenly went into labor. He pulled into the gas station and ran for help while his friend stayed with the woman. When he came back out with a worker, they called 911. Using gloves and napkins from the gas station, they followed instructions on the phone. But when the baby came out, the cord was wrapped around its neck. The worker unwrapped it and the boy survived, thanks to 3 strangers at a gas station. He held the man with tears in his eyes. The wounds were too bad. He was going to die. He heard a noise. He wasn't alone. Someone was trying to get in. He ran, bursting through the front door and sprinting into the woods. Footsteps pounded behind him. The man was chasing him. He ran harder, seeing a road ahead. A police car rolled by and his heart leapt with relief until the officer drew his gun. The other man finally emerged. A second cop? Confused, his eyes fell to his wrist, a plastic bracelet that read St. Mary's Psychiatric Hospital. They pulled out the patient's brain and dropped it in a bucket, along with nearly 10,000 others, all done in secret without permission, creating the largest brain collection in the world. Decades later, a journalist started asking questions about her aunt. Her files showed almost nothing, just that she was taken at 14 and locked away in a mental institution. The trail went cold until the journalist learned about the hidden brains. Digging deeper, she uncovered a secret file, and under her aunt's name, just one note, 738. When she was finally led into the basement, they pointed to a single bucket, and inside was her aunt's brain. If your arms turned into wings, could you actually fly? Well, they would need to be at least 20 feet wide to carry you, and you would need chest muscles twice the size of a bodybuilder's just to lift them. To make these muscles more stable, you would need one giant bone in your chest. But you'd be too heavy to lift off by flapping, so instead you would have to jump off a cliff and glide. And since your lungs aren't designed for flight, you would pass out mid-air, meaning you would need an oxygen tank to stay conscious as you flew. She collapsed on the train tracks, and the train was coming fast, but her dog didn't run. Instead, it bit her shirt and pulled. Foot by foot, the dog dragged her toward the edge, and just as the train was roaring past, she was out of the way. But the dog wasn't. It was hit by a wheel, slicing through its leg. The train screeched to a halt, and the conductor found the woman unconscious but unharmed, with the bloody dog laying beside her. She was rushed to a vet and survived, but now lives with 3 legs. Water rushed through the open doors, tipping the massive ferry on its side. Passengers fell through the ship, and some were sucked out to sea. Others tried to get to higher ground, but they were blocked by a corridor too wide to jump. Finally, a tall passenger lay down across the gap, offering himself as a human bridge. One by one, people stepped across his back, and over the next half hour, he saved 20 people. And even though hundreds died, many survived because of him. Once you strip away your muscle, bolt 3 big gears into your shoulder. One makes your arm swing forward and back, one lifts it out side to side, and the other spins it in a circle. At the elbow, run 2 steel cables like strings. The first pulls your forearm up while the other pulls it back and down. Then add larger gears to make it bend smoothly. Inside your forearm, add a planetary gear set that twists it left and right, and at the wrist, place 2 little gears, one to move your hand up and down, and the other to tilt it side to side. When you spray a line of ants, some will survive, and since these ants have more than one queen, they can actually split into different groups, meaning you'll end up with multiple ant nests in your home, making the problem worse. Instead, set out bait. The ant picks it up thinking it's food, and when they bring it back to the nest, the poison is transferred from one ant to another until the entire colony is killed. If you collected all of the world's trash, could you launch it into space to get rid of it? Well, we produce over 6 million tons of trash every day, which is enough to fill almost 5 stadiums. So, to launch it all, you would need over 90,000 rockets every day, each fully loaded with waste. Every launch would cost millions and burn hundreds of tons of fuel, pumping out over 100 tons of CO2 per flight. And even then, most rockets only reach low Earth orbit, meaning a lot of it would come crashing back down and pollute the atmosphere as it burned up. Now, even if we did launch it further out, the massive amount of trash would eventually form a giant belt around Earth. These would orbit our planet for thousands of years, blocking out the sun and polluting the skies. She squeezed the hand sanitizer, then lit it on fire. Now, at first, the flame was almost invisible, but the alcohol in the gel burned fast, and the vapor around it caught fire too, causing the flames to heat up the skin faster than the teacher expected. You see, she had done the same experiment with classes earlier that day, and the fire went out before it heated the student's skin. But this time, the fire kept burning, blistering his hands before he finally put it out. He had to be treated for the severe burns, and the teacher resigned after the incident. He cut a hole in the wall of his new home and found a rag doll staring back at him, and next to it was a mysterious note. "Thanks for freeing me. My name is Emily. I didn't like the people who lived here in 1961, so I stabbed them." It ended with, "Hope you have knives. Hope you sleep well." Friends warned him to sell the house immediately before he became the doll's next victim. But his neighbors said the wall was renovated just a few years ago, not in 1961 like the note said, meaning someone probably placed it there as a joke. Probably. If a medieval jousting lance hit your bulletproof vest, the Kevlar inside would bend against it, and this would easily allow the force of the heavy lance to push straight through your body. But if you swapped it with medieval armor, it's made up of solid metal plates, built to handle large impacts, and if it was hit with a lance, the plates would spread out the powerful impact, stopping the pole from impaling you. As he fell to the ground, he crashed into a church steeple where his parachute got caught. And as he tried to cut himself loose, he dropped his knife. For 2 hours, he was forced to play dead while the war continued below. He watched as his fellow men were killed until an enemy soldier finally climbed up and cut him down. He was captured and put in prison, but escaped 3 days later and went on to fight the rest of the war. If we pulled the crown and metal hair off the Statue of Liberty, could we give her real hair instead? Well, you would need to shave 3 people's heads just to make a regular-sized wig. But Lady Liberty's head has 400 times more surface area than a human's. To cover it, you would need 7,800 pounds of hair, which would weigh more than an elephant. And to collect it, you would need to shave the heads of over 35,000 donors, just to fit on the statue. But if it ever blew off, it could crush a tourist boat. The dead chicken is loaded into the barrel, and compressed air is pumped inside the tank behind it. When the valve is released, the air rushes into the barrel, and this launches the bird at 400 miles per hour, slamming into the airplane's windshield. This is done because birds can fly into the plane once it's in the air, and at those speeds, it could smash right through the glass, which is why they need to test it with dead chickens first. He hit the ball so hard, the bat cracked, but as the splinters flew, the umpires noticed something odd. When they looked closer, they found a cork inside. You see, some players would drill a hole in their bat, removing the heavy wood and replacing it with a much lighter piece of cork. And this made the bat swing faster. He was immediately thrown out for cheating, but insisted it was a practice bat that got mixed up by accident. Now, this player was known for hitting over 500 home runs, so fans were left wondering if his entire career was all just a sham. As the priest lit the fire, the heat traveled to a round water tank below the floor, expanding the air inside. This forced the water through the pipes and into another container, filling it up. The weight pulled 2 chains connected to the door, making them swing open by themselves. And when the fire went out, the air cooled, which sucked the water back into the tank, lifting the container and closing the doors. He shot at the tiger, shattering her jaw and teeth. Now, she survived, but her injuries made her too weak to catch deer. So she started hunting humans instead. For years, she killed hundreds of people, leaving only bloody scraps behind. Eventually, a famous tracker found her and ended her reign of terror with a gunshot. But when he looked closer, he saw the broken teeth and realized she didn't choose to kill humans. She had to because of her injury. As you eat the bread and it moves into your stomach, if you have too much yeast in your digestive system, it starts to eat the sugars in the bread. As the sugars break down, it releases carbon dioxide and alcohol. And this is the same process used to make beer. Meaning, when the alcohol moves into your bloodstream, you'll start to feel drunk just from eating bread. This rare condition means you could be too drunk to drive, even if you haven't had a single drink. But if you can prove you have this condition, the police might just let you go. If someone caught on fire, you might think you could put it out with spit, but it would take at least a bucket full of water to put out the flames. And one spit is only about 2 milliliters, meaning it would take days to get enough, which would be too late. To actually save them, you would need a giant funnel that 10,000 people could spit into at the same time. The alert went off, showing 5 nuclear missiles heading directly towards the bunker where the man was on duty. Now, he could report this to his leaders, who would immediately launch bombs back, starting a nuclear war and ending the world as we know it. But he knew that an attack like this would use thousands of bombs instead of just 5. So he waited, knowing that he could die any minute if he was wrong. Hours passed, but nothing happened. It turns out that sunlight had bounced off the clouds and hit the sensor, which detected it as nukes. And by not reacting, he basically saved the world. She saw something weird inside her squat toilet. Confused, she went outside to open the septic tank and found a man squashed inside her toilet pipe. Police tried to pull him out, but he was wedged in too tight, so they dug out the entire pipe and cut him loose. They quickly realized he was dead, wearing only his pants and holding the rest of his clothes in his hand. His face was turned toward the toilet, so they assumed he crawled into the pipe to spy on the woman, and the police closed the case. But he was actually a respected member of the community, even working with the mayor on his re-election campaign. He also protested a local nuclear power plant, and because of this, some people think he was murdered over politics. But since the case was never reopened, his death remains a mystery. If you pulled out the stop on an organ, it would pump air into a specific set of whistles, letting you play a unique noise. By pulling out different stops, you get an endless combination of sounds. But if you pulled out all of the stops, the organ would blast at full power, shaking the walls and filling the room with a thunderous roar. And today, pulling out all the stops means using every ounce of your effort, enough to shake a whole room. The small magnet is pierced into the tongue while a retainer is fitted on the roof of your mouth, filled with sensors. And when you flick your tongue, each movement changes the magnetic field, and those changes are sent to an iPhone. The phone reads the signal and turns it into a direction, then the wheelchair moves instantly, following the motion of your tongue. This allows you to move, even while paralyzed from the neck down. He soaped up his legs and squeezed into a baby swing, hoping to win $100 from his friends. But he soon realized he was stuck. His friends abandoned him, leaving him alone in the park all night. For 9 hours, the man screamed for help, but nobody came. Until the next morning when a groundskeeper found him. He called 911 and rescuers cut the swing off the chains. They took him to the hospital where doctors used a saw to free him, leaving him with swollen legs. Her hat flew off while riding the roller coaster, and afterwards, her husband climbed over a fence to retrieve it. He hurried beneath the tracks, ignoring all of the warning signs. But just as he reached for the hat, he suddenly heard the roller coaster above him. Before he could move, a rider's foot slammed into his head. People on the ride felt the impact, but had no idea what had happened. And even though park workers rushed to help, it was no use. The man died an hour later. As they sailed into the Arctic, the water froze around them, trapping their ships in ice. Now, each ship was filled with enough food to last all 129 men for years. And they planned on the ice melting by the summer, but it didn't budge, even after almost 2 years. So they tried to walk back home on the frozen sea, where they died, still hundreds of miles away from the nearest town. Over a century later, the empty ships were finally discovered, and inside they found human bones with knife marks, meaning they didn't just freeze to death, some of them were eaten. He stumbled back and his head slipped between the rails of a drying rack. He tried to push himself free with his arm, but the plastic tightened around his neck. The wet clothes hanging on the rack added even more pressure. His cries were muffled as the rails squeezed tighter, cutting off his air. And when he was found, he was laying dead on the floor, still trapped inside. The coroner said the accident was rarer than being struck by lightning. The cup is attached to your skin, and the air inside is pumped out. This creates suction, pulling the skin upward and expanding your blood vessels. After a few minutes, it's removed, and tiny cuts are made on your raised skin. And when the cup is reapplied, the suction pulls out a small amount of blood. This is supposed to remove bad fluids and trigger the release of feel-good hormones. But the cups can sometimes carry bacteria, and if this gets inside the wound, it could cause a serious infection. He strapped the shock collar around her neck and pressed the button to test it out. You see, she barked at everything all of the time, and he had had enough. At first, he only shocked her when she barked, and it worked like a charm. But soon, he started shocking her when she just looked like she was about to bark. And one time, he even shocked her for no reason. She learned quickly and stopped barking, staying silent even when startled. One night, while the house was quiet, the dog suddenly stiffened. Her ears twitched and she stared down the hall. But she didn't bark. She only stared. The man noticed her posture and shook his head while gripping the remote. But a man stepped out from behind the wall, a gun in his hand. The owner's eyes went wide, but it was too late. He was dead, and his dog kept silent, just like he wanted. The current pinned him against the wall underwater as it rushed into the flooded drain. He kicked and flailed, but the water was too strong, until a man grabbed the boy's arm and tried to pull him out. But the current kept pulling the boy under. Others saw them struggling and rushed in to help. They grabbed onto the pair and then each other, forming a human chain into the rushing current. And together, they yanked the boy out before he drowned. If you took every grain of rice on Earth to make a giant Rice Krispies treat, how big would it be? Well, there's around 32 quadrillion grains of rice in the world today. so you would need to dump it into a bowl the size of the Loch Ness Lake, adding enough marshmallows and melted butter to fill 3,900 cargo ships, and stirring it with the Golden Gate Bridge as a spatula. You would have to bake it with space mirrors on a tray large enough to cover most of Beverly Hills. And when it's finally done cooking and lifted into the air, you would get a single Rice Krispies treat taller than Mount Fuji. He shoved the gold chunks up his butt when his boss wasn't looking. Then he walked out of the Mint building. He would take them to a gold dealer and sell them. Over 4 months, he stole 22 chunks of gold worth over $100,000. But when he went to cash the checks, the bank teller realized where he worked. Police found Vaseline in the man's locker and more gold in his safety deposit box. And after seeing the evidence, the judge found him guilty. His opponent wrapped an arm around his throat and choked him. But this wasn't just any fight, they were competing at the Olympics. Right before he blacked out, he trapped the other man's foot in his right knee and twisted to the other side, ripping the ankle out of place. The opponent gave up, but the man was already dead. You see, when he tried to escape, he turned his head too far and broke his neck. Regardless, they placed a crown of leaves on his head, declaring him the dead winner. If you launched yourself towards Earth, you would slingshot around the planet as gravity pulled you in, but the orbit would fling you back out, speeding you up without needing extra fuel. But what if you tried this with a black hole? Well, you could ride the edge to go faster, but get too close, and the intense gravity would stretch your ship like spaghetti. And if it dragged you into the center, time and space would break down around you, trapping you for eternity. He fired a pistol at the armadillo, trying to kill it, but the bullet bounced off the animal's hard shell. It struck a fence, hitting it at an angle that changed the direction, and it went straight through the back door of his mother-in-law's home. It traveled through the back of her recliner, hitting her directly in the back. Now, thankfully, she survived, but the shot did seem just a little too perfect. Investigators called the case bizarre, but no charges were ever filed. They drilled through his skull and used a grasping tool to fish out the parasite. You see, he had suddenly gotten splitting headaches, then started vomiting and collapsed. And when doctors scanned him, they found a tapeworm larva wiggling inside his brain. A cyst had formed around it, blocking fluid from flowing, so they pulled it out through his skull. The man survived, but if it had just been a few minutes later, the worm would have killed him. If you dropped a massive sponge in front of a tsunami, could it soak up the wave? Well, a tsunami carries billions of gallons of water, enough to fill all of Chicago. And to absorb it, you would need a sponge as tall as the Empire State Building. But a tsunami moves at 500 miles per hour, meaning the sponge would be flattened instantly. You would need to build a steel frame to hold it in place, and anchor it deep into the ground to actually stop the massive wave. Poke a small hole into the top of an egg and pour it out. Then rinse the shell out. Once dried, fill the hollowed egg with a mix of ground pepper and flour. Take 2 strips of tape and cross them over the hole, keeping the powder trapped inside. Now, since the shell is so fragile, it'll shatter instantly when thrown against an intruder, causing a cloud of powder to sting the intruder's eye. He mixed liquid nitrogen into the cocktail, and when she drank it, it smoked in her mouth. But the nitrogen was still active as it went down, quickly turning into gas. There was so much gas that her stomach actually exploded. She felt excruciating pain and was rushed to the hospital. But her injuries were so severe that they had to remove her stomach completely, and now her esophagus is connected directly to her intestines. The arms would be thrust at a rich man, and they would open up just enough to slide around his waist before snapping shut. The long metal spikes would trap him inside, allowing criminals to pull him to the ground. But this wouldn't kill him. Instead, he would be captured alive and kept as a hostage. Next, they would demand a ransom from his family, only releasing him once the money was paid. His 20-pound metal necklace started to pull away from his chest as he stepped into the room. He reached out to help his wife get up from the MRI table, but the machine was still on, and it had one of the most powerful magnets on Earth inside. It created a force 60,000 times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. Suddenly, his necklace shot forward, violently dragging him head first into the machine, and he died the next day from his injuries. Tiny sensors inside the handle pick up the small, shaky tremors in a person's hand. Then they send that information to a chip inside, which detects if the movement is a small, rapid tremor or a real intentional move. Then motors in the spoon's head shift in the opposite direction of the shake. So if your hand shakes left, the motor moves right to cancel it out. And this happens in a fraction of a second, keeping the food steady.
কি খবর তোমাদের? কেমন আছো তোমরা সবাই? ভালো তো না? তুমি জানো তোমায় কালকে তো কতবার কল দিছি।
হ্যালো, আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম।
কি রে হৃদয় রহিন মানা করতেছি
কিছু হবে না কিছু। ভাবি আপনি জানেন আমি একবার অসুস্থ হয়ে গেছিলাম, ও আমাকে রক্ত দেয়নি, আর আজকে আপনাকে রক্ত দিয়ে চিঠি লিখছে।
আমাকে বুকিং দিছে মানে আমাকে কে বুকিং দিছে দোস্ত?
তোর যে আশিক আছে না, এখন তো আমার পিছনে লাগছে।
এই এই দুলাভাই সামনে থাকলে যে সালাম দিতে হয়, আপনি শিখাই না তোরা? কেমন আছো তুমি?
ভালো।
আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করবো না রক্তটা দিবি তুই?
আমি কেন রক্ত দেবো? প্রেম খরচ তুই, রক্ত
আমার বন্ধু জিসেন আপনাকে অনেক ভালোবাসে ভাবি, আপনার ওর রক্ত যাওয়াটা বিধে হতে দিবেন না ভাবি।
073421924 এটা তোমার নাম্বার না?
জি জি, আপনি কেমন আছেন?
ভালো নেই, আমি ভালো নেই। আমিও তোর মতোই ভাবতেছি, রক্ত যদি দিতে যায় না, রক্তটা
আপনার কাছে এইটা আমার লাস্ট রিকোয়েস্ট ভাবি।
আচ্ছা
কখন আসবে তোদের ভাবি? আর ভালো লাগতেছে না আমার। সে যে কেন এলো
বন্ধু তুই যদি রক্ত দেস?
ভালো লাগে না রে দোস্ত।
না দুলা ভাই, আমি তো কোচিং এ যাই নাই, আমার তো বাসায় গেস্ট আসছে, আর আমার আম্মু তো একা, এজন্য আমি যাই না। আমার পড়াশোনা সবকিছু বন্ধ করে দিবে, তখন আমি কি করব?
আরে ছাইরা দে। ভালোবাসা যে এত প্যারা, এত কষ্ট, এত জ্বালা যন্ত্রণা, জানলে ভালোই বাসতাম। জিসান আর তুলির ভালোবাসার ইতিহাস, তাই রক্ত লাগবে দোস্ত।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম দুলা ভাই।
আরে শালা, ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম। কি খবর, কেমন আছো? বান্ধবীও তো যায় না, এতবার ফোন দিলাম ফোনও ধরতেছে না। তুমি একটা ফোন দাও তো, ফোন বের করো।
কি বলেন দুলা ভাই, ও যায় নাই? কথা হইছে, ভাইয়া বলছে যে ভাইয়া আমাদের কোচিং এর সামনে আর আসবে না, আর তোকে ডিস্টার্বও করবে না।
জানো না কারণ না আমি 1 থেকে 3 গুনমু না বাবা। প্রেম হইলেই হবে, প্রেম হইলে এমনি ডিফারেন্স হবে বাবা। আমার খালি ওরে দরকার।
রক্ত কেন?
ইতিহাস লিখবো, ভালোবাসার ইতিহাস।
ভালো আছি, আপনি ভালো আছেন?
আমি তো ভালো আছি, তো তোমার বোন কোথায়?
আচ্ছা একটা মিনিট, আমি কল দিচ্ছি।
এক রাতেই ভালো হয়ে গেল, এটাও আমার বিশ্বাস করতে হবে। দোস্ত আমার না ভয় লাগছে।
তুমি অনেক ভালো একটা মাইয়া, তোমার অনেক ভালো হইবে।
আমার মা হাসপাতালে ভর্তি, ডাক্তার কইছে 2 ব্যাগ রক্ত আর 1 লাখ টাকা যদি আজকে
জন্য পাগল আর আপনি তানিয়ার জন্য পাগল।
আরে জুলি, এইটারে কয় ভালোবাসা। দাঁড়িয়া, তোমার হাতের রান্না।
তোমার বড় ভাইয়ের ভালো না থাকলে এখান থেকে চলে যেতে বলো।
আরে জুলি, তুমি আবার কি রাইখা কি
প্রেমে ফেলতে পারো, তাহলে আমি নিজে দাঁড়িয়ে থেকে তোমার আর তানিয়ার বিয়ে দিব।
সারাদিন ধরে ভিক্ষা করছে, আমাদের 1 লাখ টাকা আর 2 ব্যাগ রক্ত লাগবে। কি করবো বলো, আমি তো আর প্রফেশনাল রিক্সা চালক না, প্রেমিক রিক্সা চালক। আমার তাহলে ক কি লিখছস, কয় লাইন লিখছস ক।
সে কি তোরে খুব ডিস্টার্ব করতো? আরে না, আরে শোন না একবার কি।
আচ্ছা
ভাই আমাকে আপনার সাথে লেগে যান।
কাম তোরা, বুঝছি তো আমি, আজকে আমার বিজয়ের দিন। এখানে 100 কবিতা আছে, সার্ভিসটা তো একটু আলাদা থাকবে, তাই না?
দেখেন আমি কলেজে যাব, আমার দেরি হয়ে যাচ্ছে, এসব নাটক দেখা
চাইছে আর কি। ওই যে তানিয়া তো পড়াশোনা করে সন্ধ্যার সময় যদি একটু খায় মাথাটা ঠান্ডা। এই এগুলা কি? এই কার্ডের ভিতরে আমার মেয়ের নাম লেখা কেন? এই বাইরে মনে কর পিক করতে, বুঝছো? ওই যে আয়া পড়ছে আছে, আয়া বলছে।